Hello, John. It's good to have you.
Hi, Daria. It's really good to be here. Thank you.
Today, we're going to discuss an important topic about Israel and Palestine conflict. What kind of solutions are there?
Oh boy. First off, let's hope there still is a Palestine after this genocide. I don't call it a war. Is over. The mainstream media had reported some months ago that the death toll at that time, according to them, was at about 70,000 Palestinians. Recently, they've come out with a figure much closer to 35,000. I don't know how they went from over 70 to 35,000, but the Lancet came out with a report a few days ago. I read it yesterday. They reported that 186,000 Palestinians have died since this conflict genocide began. And you have to wonder what Netanyahu wants to accomplish. He said recently that he's not going to end this until Hamas is destroyed. But he has to know that if he doesn't, certainly somebody in his cabinet must have told him that if you continue to slaughter civilians, you're only going to create more future Hamas people. What are these children who lost their moms and dads in this slaughter? How are they going to grow up without any hatred? I don't know. But you're certainly not going to wipe out Hamas. You're not going to do that. Not this way. Not this way. As far as any solution goes, first off, let's take it before October. Again, I don't consider this a war. I consider this a genocide, and I certainly don't believe it began in October of 2023. Some people go back to biblical times, but that can go back and forth. People only saw what they read and what they wanted to believe. No disrespect to anybody. But what we do know is that 1917, before World War II, this is just at the end of World War I, the Sykes-Picot line was drawn. And this broke the heart of Lawrence of Arabia. He had worked so hard. So once the Ottoman Empire, and I know I'm straying a little bit, but I'll get back to my point. They decided they would take over the Arab states. So it went from the Ottoman Empire to the UK and France. They drew a line in the sand, literally, and some countries became under France, some under the UK. And then a few months after that, the Balfour Declaration was passed in November of 1917, excuse me, which read that they wanted a state, a Zionist state for the Jewish people. So that was ratified, and that's, in my opinion, when this started. Fast forward a little bit to 1948, after World War II. That's when it became a state of Israel. 750,000 Christian, Muslim, and even Jewish Palestinians felt forced to leave. I think those are facts. The biblical thing, I don't know is a fact, but we do know the facts from 1917 on. Fast forwarding a little bit, there have been 2 or 3 resolutions passed by the UN that called for a 2-state solution, Israel-Palestine. It was not agreed to by Israel. There are a lot of countries in favor and supporting Palestine, but In fact, it's a majority of countries. I think it's 143 at this point. But I believe they have to go back to the borders, pre-1967, the Golan Heights and all the territory that Israel claimed it's won, it's rightfully taken over. It hasn't. They're living there illegally. There was a resolution that said they have to leave. They didn't. The numbers of settlements in the West Bank have only grown since then, and they're there illegally. Israel, in my opinion, has to at least put an end to that. If they can't do better, they at least get some of those people. I know it's hard to up and leave again, but Palestinians had to do it. But at least let's end settlements in West Bank. Let's go back to the borders they had before 1967 and sit down. And there were a lot of, they made some progress over the years. Of course, after the Camp David talks, Anwar Sadat was assassinated, as was the president of Israel shortly after that. So there's a lot of extremists. Government and extremists are keeping this from happening. If it can happen somehow, possibly we can move forward. Hopefully we can move forward.
Will the unity of Muslim world aid Palestine in this conflict?
Are they aiding, or how would it be if they aided the Muslim world?
Are they aiding? Or they will?
They're supporting to some extent, but a lot of the Iraq, Iran, a lot of those countries, and I know, they had and have domestic issues that are first and foremost for many of those countries. There may be other reasons that they haven't helped as much as they can. Certainly they support Palestine. Let's hope that they can unite and help. I don't like to bring religion into this ever, whether it's Jewish, Muslim, whatever it might be. But let's call it what it is. They are Muslim countries, and Israel is a Jewish state. And I hope that they get together stronger and make more demands on the powers that be. It's not so easy, but let's hope they can change their priorities a little bit and do so.
Today, there are global actions in favor of Palestine. What people and countries are backing the Palestinians?
Too many to mention. Like I said, there's 143 countries that are backing the Palestinians. So it might be easier to go with the ones that aren't. I think there's only 9 that aren't supporting Palestine. And of course, 2 of those are the US and Israel. The Czech Republic, the last I saw, was not supporting this. Some reports say Argentina isn't, but I can't be 100%. That makes no point to me. It makes no sense. There's 2 or 3, maybe 4 countries out near Polynesia, Micronesia. Some of those need the help of the US. They're sort of US satellite countries, so they don't want to risk the wrath of the US. US gives foreign aid to countries to the number of $50 billion US dollars a year. 18 billion of that goes to the Ukraine now. 3.3 billion every year for years now goes to Israel. 90% of it ends up for military in Israel, as if they need help. But there are other countries, Haiti and some of those countries in Indonesia, Micronesia, that are getting a lot of money, $1 million or $2 million. As if that's not a lot of money, but the next step that the US usually takes is ending that. The next step the US takes is sanctioning those countries on the, and excuse me for a second. I wanted to see the other countries that might be against this. 25 abstained, 9 against: Argentina, Hungary, and then all those Micronesia and the Czech Republic. Those are the only ones that are against it. So they have support from the majority of the world.
What do you believe is at heart of all wars?
Oh, well, Colonel General Smedley Butler wrote a book about it right after World War I. 1920, he may have written the book. He was highly decorated, and he wrote a book called, and I hope I can remember, War is for Profit, or something for that. There's so much money made, and I don't want to stray off. What was the question again?
What is at the heart of all wars?
Okay. It used to be for take over a country that might have had minerals, food, better land, but that was a long time ago. Now what's at heart is profit, and to replace leaders, what they call here dictators, which is nonsense if they've been elected in many of these cases, including Bashar Assad. You see, he was elected, never wanted to be president, but it's for money. They make a lot of money on wars, and they can replace a lot of these so-called dictators with puppet regimes. They've been doing that forever. And I guess, man, I can't say that. So that's about it. That's about it. Profit. It's always the money. We were all warned in 1961 by President Eisenhower as he was leaving the White House in January of 1961 about the military-industrial complex. He told us all here in the States to beware of that. Nobody listened at the time. Nobody listened. Very few people now even know what that means or meant at the time. But with the help of the CIA, giving the media false news, Operation Mockingbird, in about 1952, they purposely decided to give the media false news. So at that time, it wasn't perhaps that the media was always lying to us. They were relying on the information they got from the CIA. But fast forward, and now I believe I call the media the first line of the industrial, military industrial thing. They make sure, complex, I'm sorry, military industrial complex, thank you. They are on now. In 1955, there was a good show. Good night and good luck. I forgot the sponsor, the guy who ran the show. I forgot his name. It'll come to me. But anyway, Alcoa was the first company that pulled their support from this show because they made parts and they worked with the military. They did not want people to hear his story, which was closer to the truth than anybody else was reporting, especially in the mainstream media at that time. So they pulled their support from his show. It was closed down. And since then, a lot of other sponsors, Boeing, General Electric, Northrop, you can go on and on with the Raytheon, Grumman, with the companies that prosper prosper big time from military wars. The equipment they make, they spend 70,000, I'm sorry, $70 million on each tank. It's 180,000 and again, there I go again, thinking that the number might be in the realm of sanity. $180 million for each jet fighter, and the price goes higher than that. So they now control the media because they're the sponsors. They own the media. So that's why I consider the media the front line of the military industrial complex. Does that answer the question at all?
Yes. um,
Okay.
Talking about dollars, do you think Americans like to play? I don't know, do they even realize that they're paying, when they're paying taxes, they're paying for war? I mean, so
No,
the war to
they
be
have no idea.
continued.
No, the majority of people don't know. The government has done everything it can to make sure the public don't know. The government likes it when the public just likes talking about and fighting about both sides of the Bible. When people spend too much time, they get too hyped up on Democrats versus Republicans. It doesn't matter when both the Republicans and the Democrats go to vote on foreign policy, they all vote the same way, pretty much the same way. So no, Americans don't know. They don't, and because they don't know, how can they care? It's
Well,
only, in my opinion, it's only in my opinion that until somehow that's ended in the US side of this whole worldly matter, that when people, I have to believe that if people knew the truth, knew where their tax dollars were going to, they would finally stand up and do something to put an end to this. But until they know, how can they care?
after this interview, they will know.
Yeah.
And I hope that they will consider about it, because that's a good
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
actually. They're,
It gets me angry. I'm sorry. Can I say one more thing on that?
yes, sure.
Okay. It gets me upset when I speak to anybody, friends, my sister, my family, anybody, and they don't know any of this, and they don't even like me to speak about it. They don't want to know. They just want to go about their happy lives and rather talk about the soffits that they just put in their house or how old their new dog is. They do not want to hear me talk about it. So if they don't want to hear me talk about it, my own sister, I can imagine how hard it must be for anybody trying to get the truth out.
I guess that's because they like to live their life in their shell.
Yeah,
Their shell. They don't want
yeah.
to think wider.
Why their shells can't expand a little bit. They're safe in their shells.
Yeah.
They get 1 or 2 vacation weeks a year. They can afford to live under a roof. Majority of them. Some of them can't hear it. It's getting worse. The homeless situation is getting worse. But the ones that can, they're happy living in a shell.
How can politicians prevent military conflicts?
Can you repeat the first part of that?
Yes. How can politicians prevent military conflicts?
In this country, not a matter of they can't, they just won't. The same lobbyists, which are the people the sponsors send down to make sure that they get certain laws passed in both the Senate and the Congress. They pay them a lot of money. The lobbyists write most of the bills. Sometimes the senators and the Congress people don't even know what's in their own bills by the time it's been voted on. They make so much money. Again, it's an expanded shell that they have, but they're able to send their family to college, the university, to give him money down to keep their family safe for generations to come. They're not going to put a risk to that by speaking up against wars. They make too much money from it. So I'm afraid it's nearly impossible. Don't want to sound so negative, but over the years of looking at this and watching it, you kind of sour on the
Well,
situation.
it is what it is. Um,
Yeah, unfortunately, it is what it is, and I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe the rest of the countries, I don't know. I don't know if they can influence Americans or not, but let's hope something changes.
what do you have in mind about the concept of a multipolar world that it's being increasingly being discussed actually? And what part do Muslim nations have in this? What's your view?
By what's the term again?
Multipolar world.
Okay, I'm not that familiar with that phrase. I'm kind of an older guy, but if I'm right about that, and if I'm not, just, we'll pass me on. But if I'm right in what I think about that, you don't want to just have two countries dominating, three countries dominating everything. The more countries, the more people that can get together, have a voice in the Muslim world and without, and throughout the whole world, the more countries that work together, maybe they can have a voice and change some of these other things that are being done by basically by one, two, or three countries. And again, hope that they can influence them and sort of pressure them in a way to be more fair. Once what these countries, the one, two, or three countries are doing is exposed, maybe they won't continue to be the same, react the same. I
In
hope that
the,
answered the question.
yes, that's fine. That's a good answer.
Okay, good.
Um, in the end of our conversation, I have a philosophical question for you. What is true freedom for a person? And what is the point of life?
Oh boy. The answer from me on the point of life, what I might have thought was the point of life when I was 20 years old. By the time I turned 25 and I looked back to how I felt about it when I was 20, it seemed silly to me. It didn't make any sense. I hope I'm not too negative, but every 5 years when I look back on how I thought about that, the point of life, it's always changed. So I'm not sure what the point of life is. I'd like to say to leave the world in better condition, in better shape than it was um, when they got here. And when they leave it, I hope the world, and I hope to think that they think and hope that the world's in a better situation. I know that's kind of a cotton candy way of looking at it, but I can't think of anything else that the point of life is. I mean, saying something like I don't even know what. I think the most honest answer I can give is I have no idea. I have no idea.
That's an answer too.
Yeah. And the
And
first part of that question?
yeah, what's about true freedom for a person? And that reminds us about Julian Assange story.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sure.
Oh, okay. Freedom for each person. To be able to be free to accomplish some goals, to have a family or just take care of the family you do have, be able to speak out, to speak the truth about what you feel about. And you want to go right from there to Assange. Obviously, you can't speak out, especially when it comes to what do we call it here? National security. They always blanket it as national security when anybody does anything the government here doesn't approve of or is even afraid of. Again, it's the military industrial complex, the media, and how dare anybody speak a truth. Assange took one example, and what was Bradley, forgot his first name. He's now Chelsea Brad. He changed his gender, but he let the world know about an Apache helicopter attack that went into New Baghdad. And I happen to know on computer, I know one of the soldiers that saw this happen. They slaughtered, there were 4 or 5 people getting into a station wagon. The Apache helicopter, I think it's 50 MG helicopter, whatever the size, they're huge bullets. They're not even called bullets coming out of the guns from the Apache. They killed those people instantly. You couldn't, they were just torn apart instantly. And then it went on, it saw 4 or 5 people standing on a corner. One of them had a camera, and 2 of them were carrying guns, but they weren't using the guns. It's what they do. I've almost ordered the guy's name, Ethan McCord, I think. And people might want to look up murder in New Baghdad. I think it's Ethan McCord. He went to that van that was a pickup truck, but no, it was either a station wagon or a van. He saw that the children were still alive, barely alive. The little girl had shards of glass in her eyes. She couldn't open her eyes. They were in her eyelids. He carried her to the Humvee. Then he went back. The other guys were throwing up. They were disgusted by the soldiers. He went back to that vehicle, and he saw there was a sign of life from the boy. He carried him out to the Humvee as well. He had seen Apache helicopters drive these, I'm not a military guy, but they were shooting into the houses, whether or not they knew who was living in them, just slaughtering people. He couldn't take it anymore. And I'll get back to Assange. This is what he released on WikiLeaks. So people that cared about it got to know. The U.S. couldn't have that, couldn't have any more people know about it. So this is what happened to him. Now, Ethan McCord was eventually sent out of the army. He was given his release, lost all his benefits. They wouldn't give him the mental help he needed for post-traumatic stress syndrome. They just kicked him out for helping. He's since gone back to Iraq and met those 2 children that he saved back in, I guess it was 2003. Of course, so what does the U.S. do? They lock up Julian Assange. Bradley Manning was Bradley before he was now Chelsea. Had to go to court. They let him free. Yeah, but they put him in jail for a year. Had to serve some time. But Assange had to spend 6 years in solitary confinement. Why? In my opinion, to serve as a message to any Americans, anyway, who might dare to speak the truth. This is what happens. And is that such a horrible thing to report? It's the truth. It's not like he's giving away spy type things and satellite information. It's the truth of one incident, and you get 6 years for that in solitary confinement. It's not going to silence people, I don't think. People that want to step forward, I'd like to think they won't even think about what might happen to them. They might think of the bigger picture of what they're trying to accomplish might happen. And what they're trying to accomplish is, again, if people don't know, they can't care. So they want people to finally know some of these things. And I don't think they're going to stop doing it. I hope they don't. I think Assange might not even stop doing it, but we'll see. I hope. Good for him. That's all I know. Good on anyone who tells the truth.
I think he's really brave for what he's done.
Absolutely. absolutely brave. Snowden too. But I don't want to turn off any listeners who might be not understanding all this or not in favor of all this. But I consider Assange to, well, now that I said I consider him to be very brave, I can say I consider him to be a hero.
Would you like to share with us, tell us more about your certificates that
Oh,
they're behind you?
yeah, I was invited to be in a coalition for peace, to go to Syria, to be in a, I met my coalition people in Beirut, and they were great people, especially, I have to speak out about one a little bit, the Reverend Andrew Ashdown. He's a good friend and he's a great man. He does a lot of things in a lot of countries for peace. So we were invited to Damascus, the University of Damascus, and we spent some time there. I was able, and I wanted to know the truth as I could understand it, as best I could understand it. So as soon as I got to Damascus, I contacted some Facebook friends. I hadn't met them yet, but we were just Facebook friends. Now we're real friends. I met all of them there. Two of them, in particular, was Suzanne, and she asked me on a Thursday. I had gotten here on a Wednesday. She asked me Thursday if I could attend their family's dinner with all their aunts, uncles, kids on the following night, Friday. I needed an answer because in Syria, maybe in the Muslim world, yeah, most things are closed on Friday. So I went to Andrew Ashdown. I asked him if he was okay with me doing this on Friday. He said, yes, go for it. So I went back, I told her this. I got to meet her in her house, in the house of the family. They all told me the stories. They were all the same. The SAA doing the right thing, and the SA, the terrorists, were did what they did, and they showed me some of the pictures of the damage. I went on to other states, other parts of that country, and I heard the same thing. I learned that when Aleppo, North Aleppo, my other friend Shahe lives in South Aleppo. We met, we're friends to this day. I don't know how they get by. And then the US throws sanctions on top of that. It's almost impossible to get by. But in North Aleppo, in 2000, towards the end of 2015, they were finally liberated by the Syrian Arab army, the good guys, and the terrorists were kicked out. The people wanted to come out after being forced to stay in their homes and other brutalities. They wanted to come out, tell the truth. There's that truth again. That's when our media pulled out. They didn't want to interview these people. They didn't want to talk to them. They didn't want to see them. As soon as they were liberated, and Andrew was there, Reverend Andrew Ashdown was there, and he told me they were all coming out. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that little kid that was in the orange thing and said that he was being rescued. No, he wasn't being rescued. And Andrew met him, went to his house, and got the story there. And again, we found out the truth. So that's pretty much that combination is for. And the other one in Iraq, I went to Iraq in 2018, invited by an Iraqi friend, another Facebook friend, but he was also living in Minnesota. He invited me to stay in his house for a month. So I went to Najaf, which is about 100 miles south of Baghdad. And I stayed there and I got to know the people. They were lovely. They were absolutely lovely, despite the fact that their city was torn to shreds. They have nothing. The cancer rate is 45%. The poverty rate is higher than that. Their schools, they only have school a half a day because they can't afford to buy the kids lunch. I learned a lot about what's really going on in Iraq. There's still like 20 military bases there. They don't want them there. And going back 2001, when Cheney was asked by Wolfowitz, well, what's our exit plan to this 2001 attack, 2002, Afghanistan first, Iraq. We're going to take over the oil and we're going to run things. So we're still there. And anyway, going back to that, I went to see the ambassador with my friend's help. We sat down with him in Baghdad, the American ambassador, and all we were asking for was a library. These good people in the job, you want to learn. All they needed was a library, not an expensive library, a very modest library. He said no. He wouldn't even do that. Yep, $70 million per tank, but we couldn't have a little library built. So anyway, that's Iraqi.
Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Thank you for this interview and have a good day.
Okay, thank you very much. And you too.